Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Cox. I'm a member of the Netcapital team. Let's allow one moment for everybody to get situated. Thanks. Okie dokie. So let's go ahead and dive in though. So welcome again. Thank you so much for joining us in our first March Demo Day series. The subject for today is Medtech and Biotech. So that's personally incredibly important to me. And we have 3 companies presenting today, and we will have 3 demos throughout this week. And so I really do hope that you continue to join us throughout the rest of the week, and more information in that is always included in the email. A couple quick housekeeping items. The format will be 5-minute presentations by each company. I will go in order of that was included in the registration. So we will start with C-Reveal, and then Red Oak Instruments, and then finish with Phoenix Pharma Labs. Please do engage with the Q&A functionality in chat. I know that there's also a chat feature, but the Q&A feature in Zoom makes it so much easier for me to track all those questions and make sure that I get to as many of them as possible. And we do want this to be interactive, so please do ask those questions. As always, these companies are actively raising capital on the Netcapital platform, so you can go to netcapital.com, search for each of these companies by name, learn more there, and of course, you can invest. So with all that being said and much ado, please help me in welcoming Thomas with C-Reveal Therapeutics. Come on in here, Thomas.
Good to be here, Eric. Thanks very much. So I guess I'll kick it off. I'm Thomas Hogg. I'm the CEO of C-Reveal Therapeutics. By way of background, I have a PhD in molecular biology. I attended law school subsequent to leaving the lab. I spent about 20 years as an intellectual property lawyer, investor, and entrepreneur, previously owning both my own law firm, as well as having, through that law firm, founded a company called Fda, an immuno-oncology neoantigen platform discovery company, which we sold in 2015 to Agenus for a large multiple for early investors. The basis of the technology behind Fda was a phosphopeptide neoantigen set of targets specific to cancer. So targets that the immune system could recognize to see cancer cells as such and mark them for deletion. One of the, so going back to C-Reveal for a moment, C-Reveal is a precision oncology company, meaning that we are developing small molecule drugs to target a very specific proprietary mechanism of action. And that mechanism of action revolves around 2 phosphatases, ALPP and ALPPL2. So these are alkaline phosphatases, enzymes of that type that are specific for the placenta and a placenta-like isoform of that molecule. This mechanism of action that we're targeting through C-Reveal was discovered in the lab of Mark Cobbold while he was on faculty at Harvard Medical School and in his lab at Mass General Hospital in Boston. The company was also co-founded by Keith Flaherty, a world-renowned expert in oncology and a seasoned drug hunter and experienced entrepreneur also in developing and starting companies involved in precision oncology. Another one of our co-founders is Cyril Bennis, a structural biologist who's at the Novartis Institute for Genomic Research currently. we're raising about $3 million at this point to get us to a major value inflection point that we see in about 12 months from now. We have a program in place to both take the science that was developed in Mark Cobbold's lab to a clinical research organization called Evotech, which is a large blue chip research organization, to take that science, put it in their hands, get it optimized, and at the same time conduct a high throughput screen to identify our drug candidates. In parallel to that, we're also working with another CRO called WuXi, WUXI, to perform a DNA encoded library screen as well. And the scope of the raise that we're putting together now will get us through that plan and get us to that value inflection point.
Thank you so much for that, Thomas. And do remember that you can engage in the Q&A. We want to keep a couple moments available for you guys to come on in. But I always like to start off with talking about, all right, before I do that, actually, let me go ahead and answer this, get this question going. So coming in from the crowd to a lay person, how would you describe what makes your product different from existing competitors? So can you talk a little bit about the competitive landscape and any defensibility you have and their value over your competitors?
So from the perspective of business competitors, we don't see any. We don't see anybody, we don't know anybody working on ALPP and ALPPL2 as enzyme targets for cancer immunotherapy. How we see our technology falling into the landscape is that over the last few years, checkpoint blockade therapy has become standard of care for a wide variety of different cancers. And that therapy, in a sense, revs up T cells, but it's only effective in about 10–15% of patients. And our approach aims to expose the tumor to the immune system by disabling these cancer marker disabling enzymes. And so by doing that, we hope to potentiate some of these existing breakthrough therapies and increase the level of penetrance to wider varieties of patients. With respect to formal IP, we have a patent portfolio that's directed to and claims methods of increasing antigen load on cancer cells via inhibiting these enzymes. So we have some IP around the mechanism of action, and we'll be filing new IP as we generate new product candidates. And so we'll cover the compositions of matter as well of our drug candidates.
And quite a diverse background that you had, including intellectual property, obviously critically important for a company like yours. Can you talk a little bit about your IP strategy and your portfolio and how the products are defensible?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have method of use claims that we're pursuing around the mechanism of action. So around this mechanism by which the phosphatases that we've identified are deleting the markers from their cell surface that identify them to the immune system as being cancerous. So anybody who tries to do that approach with respect to that mechanism of action run afoul of our patent claims. Then as a next line of defense, we will be filing patent applications around the chemical entities themselves, the drug candidates themselves. And then as time goes on, we'll have additional strategy to file new IP around dosage forms, dosage regimen, and different specific patient populations for which the therapy will be most appropriate. Again, I don't know of anybody else working on this mechanism, so I don't see a direct competitor there. But certainly from the perspective of intellectual property, and once we're able to market this product, we'll be able to have quite substantial patent protection on the one hand, but also given that we'll be pursuing new chemicals, we'll have regulatory exclusivity as well under the FDA's new chemical entity exclusivity provisions.
Absolutely, thank you for that. And can you tell us a little bit more about what the kind of oncology market or the market for cancer therapeutics? How large is that market?
Well, it's enormous. I mean, it's 600,000 people are diagnosed with cancer per year. And here we're talking about the cancer immunotherapy line of products. So, the chemotherapies are not inexpensive drugs because they frequently are life-saving or treatments of last resort, and certainly these breakthrough immunotherapies like Keytruda and Opdivo, these checkpoint blockade therapies that I mentioned before, have annual sales, or a course of treatment would cost $250,000 to $350,000, and have annual sales approaching $20 billion. So we see our product as being likely as being appropriate for about 50,000 patients per year, and we're looking to price it around the $100,000 per course, so which puts it at about $5 billion or so a year in peak annual sales.
Absolutely. A couple more questions coming in before we go to the next presentation. This process has been approved by the FDA already, is one of the questions.
No. So the FDA approval process begins just prior to entering the clinic in a clinical trial. So you sort of the final step before that is when you have a finalized drug candidate, you do a series of GLP tox studies to ensure that the product is as safe as possible before going into the clinic. And then you have phase 1 clinical trials, which may be 20 patients, phase 2, which may be 200, and phase 3, which are then several thousand patients. And so that's the FDA approval process. But that being said, C-Reveal was formed to develop these drugs prior to entering the clinic. So once we are at that stage where we're looking to enter the clinic, we will likely be partnering with a big pharma company to do that work.
Great. Last couple questions I'll add again here. How confident are you in the ability to specifically target tumor cells? And what data do you have to suggest there will be no off-target effects / toxicity? Good question.
So we're quite confident from the perspective of both the science and the team. From the perspective of the team, this technology came out of the lab of Mark Cobbold. Mark Cobbold is the head of, or one of the, he's a vice president and one of the heads of early stage oncology discovery at AstraZeneca. He's a physician scientist with a long history of drug discovery and platform technology discovery in immuno-oncology, having formed a number of successful immunotherapy and immuno-oncology companies, including Fossimmune, as I mentioned before, as well as Gritstone. Additionally, Keith Flaherty is an expert in this space and has been affiliated with and was a co-founder of Loxo Oncology, which was a company sold to Eli Lilly for about $8 billion. So from the perspective of the team, I don't think you could get much better scientists. From the perspective of the science itself, we've done studies on a range of different cancer cell lines where we've overexpressed these phosphatases and shown very specific decreased T cells killing activity. And we've knocked out their expression both via crude tool compound as well as via CRISPR methods, and seen greatly increased T cell killing activity of these cells. We've also taken cancer cell lines where we've overexpressed these phosphatases, grown them up as cell cultures, injected them into immuno-incompetent mice, grown tumors, and analyzed them, and shown that the phosphopeptide tumor targets are greatly decreased. So the T cells that are able to recognize them wouldn't be able to see them. So we have great data on that respect. We're also in a partnership with a company called Xfera, where we have access to tumor biopsy samples that are grown in a proprietary microfluidic chamber, where we can run actual experiments on these tumor samples and take into account the tumor environment itself, which we think would be more predictive than some of the usual mouse models.
Thank you so much. And lastly here, somebody says, it seems like your background and company is well suited for a traditional venture deal. Why pursue a Reg CF offering, and how much do you anticipate needing to raise in the future?
So that's a great question. We were putting to all companies start somewhere, and we started with an angel round that we were putting together in the beginning of 2020. The COVID crisis hit, and things became very settled in the markets, and And so we actually put everything on hold and weren't able to complete that angel round until till the summer. But we were able to get it done. And at that point, we recognized that we were sort of in a different world with respect to raising additional money. We weren't able to get the sort of the same types of meetings and meet people in person as before, and began to explore other ways of raising capital. And the Netcapital platform became we became aware of it, introduced to it, and it seemed like an excellent way to sort of have an ongoing raise where we can have rolling closes, and provide our investors with an easy, efficient way to raise or to invest without sending around a whole lot of paper back and forth, and also provide them with access to a secondary market. That being said, we are an early stage technology company. We are between we're post angel, obviously, but we're sort of getting into that window of more institutional seed round financing, as the caller or the question suggested. But the more we can raise through the Netcapital platform, the more we can do it this way, the better shape and the better position we'll be in vis-a-vis the institutional investors going forward. So this is, I think, a new way to raise money for many, certainly in the biotechnology space, and it's been working out very well for us.
It's been great to be a piece of your fundraising strategy. Thank you so much for that, Thomas. Keeping the party going here, please help me welcome Bill Pass with Red Oak Instruments. Bill, why don't you come on in, tell us a little bit about your company, and do feel free to share your screen if you'd like to present something.
Okay. I'm a physicist by training, so I have to use lots of graphs and pictures to demonstrate what I'm doing because I can't talk straight otherwise. So I will use some graphics. Basically, though, our equipment is very biomechanical, very simple, basically, compared to what you just heard. We take a device that you hold in your hand, and we make 3 very rapid measurements of your hands, of your thumb, your index finger, and your small finger. We measure it every millisecond, and we look for noise. We look for clumsiness. We look for problems in the way your nerves are talking in your hand. And the easiest way to show you this is to, if I can turn this on properly. Is that on your screen, or have I just killed myself here?
No, you're okay, but we do not see your screen share quite yet.
All right, so let me try this differently. Let's kill this. There we go. Share the screen. Well, it says here in small print.
Yep, now we can see your screen exactly. If you could put into presentation mode, that would be perfect.
There it goes, finally. All right. Basically, what we do is by measuring the forces that you apply with your thumb finger and index finger, we can look at pulse trains. So basically what we do is a time resolved force. So what you look at over here on these pulses represent an individual who squeezes and releases on command to a computer program. And we do this for both the left hand and the right hand, and we look for irregularity in the structure. And as you can see here, we have a very ratty baseline, and the pulses themselves are erratic and not consistent. What we then do is, this is just for the thumb. If we look at for the thumb and the index and the small finger, we can look at differences between those fingers and look at the timing information. Are you gripping at the same time? Now, we consider people clumsy when they try to pick up something and they can't. And part of the reason they can't is that the fingers aren't closing at the same time. And typically we've got about a 12 millisecond difference in the way our fingers work when we try to grab something. We've seen errors on the order of 80 milliseconds. And so those are the kinds of errors that we're looking for. But if we look at these different forces, they're very erratic. We look at a cross plot of the forces. They should be a nice straight line, nice smooth line out, smooth line back. They're not. That means the fingers are not moving well together. They're not well coordinated. Now notice the left hand is far worse than the right. So we then take our computer programs and analyze all this data, and we look at these pulses that I've blown up here for simplicity. And we look for differences between these pulses every millisecond. And then we look at the cross plots over here. And what we're looking for is this kind of noise where one finger is moving and the other one isn't. And that's the jitter that you see in people's hands, or the way it shakes. And then if you analyze this, we'll flag this particular individual as injured because we can see their average score up here at the top is over 1. It's up to 2.55. And then we look at the pattern to try to figure out what the issue is. In this particular case, this pattern is consistent with carpal tunnel syndrome developing. It's not quite as bad on the right hand, but it's certainly developing on the left. It's not as bad as I have seen in some, but it's clearly something that needs to be treated before it requires surgery. So the patterns are very useful. We've looked at patterns for many, many different injuries to the hands. Even traumatic brain injury shows a very characteristic pattern. We also measure reaction times, but the reaction times themselves aren't always very useful, basically because everything you do slows you down. If we look at another hand, this one's a normal hand. You can see the baselines are much smoother. The pulsars are more regular. The cross plots are cleaner. And we rate this guy with a nice clean pattern and not injured. And basically you can see here too that the reaction times are fairly consistent. What it's really good for is in management of either rehabilitation or a sports trainer or a coach. This is a tennis player that was looked at for 2 semesters. And basically she was developing an issue with her left hand. And it wasn't until she modified the backhand grip that she was no longer injuring her left hand. And now you can see very consistent results for the rest of the season. So it demonstrated that a problem needed to be addressed. It was addressed. It was the correct solution because it worked. Back here, the solution wasn't correct because after treatment, it came back. After treatment, it came back. Now, after readjusting the hand, it did not come back. So they fixed the problem. And again, I just wish to stress that reaction time is worthless. If you look at another individual, this one has nothing wrong with them whatsoever, and it demonstrates it for the whole season. So you can document your training program, you can show efficacious training, and you can also show when injury is developing. And here's the fun part when you do rehab. This is a stroke victim that we are monitoring recovery and then treatment. And what we can see is the left hand is the darker bars. The left hand recovers fairly quickly. The right hand is recovering, but it never will recover completely. This individual is still fairly paralyzed on the right side. The reaction time, again, doesn't do you any good whatsoever. What we can do with these patterns is map a pattern to, like Alzheimer's, to traumatic brain injury, to carpal tunnel, to cubital tunnel, to radiculopathies. And we've done this through several trials that we've had in several different doctors' offices. And we're trying to figure out where this can best be used, whether it's in a clinic, or whether it's in a hospital, whether it's in an ER. The idea is to make a device that is very cheap, that is very fast, very easy to use, and that it can be spread around. The coaches can have access to it. Parents could have access to it. EMTs could have access to it so that you can demonstrate that an injury has occurred, especially in the case of a traumatic brain injury. And I quit there.
Thank you so much for that, Bill. And as people are collecting their thoughts and engaging in the Q&A, I'd love to ask, what was it that brought you into the space? Why is it that you're so passionate about traumatic brain injuries, if I may ask?
Oh, we stumbled into traumatic brain injuries, actually. I was looking at carpal tunnel, specifically for a neurologist friend of mine. And we were studying some people who had just been in a car accident. And the patterns that I was seeing with them were considerably different than what I was looking for. And I asked them what happened. And after I found out they'd been in a car accident and had suffered a traumatic brain injury, I then started looking for more. And the more I looked for, the more I found. And I found out that the patterns were very much like the patterns that we get for carpal tunnel or cubital tunnel. They're consistent. And that's what we're trying to use, is pattern recognition to help doctors make an assessment that, yes, this is something that deserves treatment right now, or no, it doesn't. We also applied this to military. We got access to a bunch of soldiers, National Guardsmen, who were having problems with PTSD and traumatic brain injury. And the issue, if right now with the military, is that the symptoms that they look for those two problems are the same. And you don't treat them the same. You need to treat a traumatic brain injury almost immediately, and you need to treat PTSD about a month later. So you've got to be able to differentiate the two. And we've been trying to figure out how to do that as well. But basically, we do pattern recognition with the time jitter in your hands, and it correlates very nicely to a great deal of problems. Yeah,
and kind of a joint question coming in from the Q&A right now. So is one of them dealing about the revenue model? Is this software as a service? And then also in terms of target audience, will it be targeted mainly at coaches and trainers or doctors? If coaches and trainers, do you have a UX designer on your team, user experience designer on your team, excuse me?
Yeah, we're looking right now to start with sports, basically because COVID shut us out of clinics. And so the best we can do is talk to some schools and some coaches. So we literally shifted to start looking at the sports ramification on it. We intend for it to be used by clinicians as well, medical practitioners. We actually have two different devices. One's a little more sophisticated that we'll use in the medical community. And the first that we're pushing out is a very simple, quick, easy to use, plug it into a computer and run it type handset that can be used by anyone with minimal training. We have a system that it can either process in the handset itself through the computer, or we can go through our HIPAA compliant servers and provide all sorts of backup and communications with you, help you describe what's going on, look for patterns and that sort of thing.
Great, thanks for that. And lastly, can you talk a little bit about the competitive landscape and what other alternatives there are out there? I know you're very, very interested. You want to make sure you emphasize that reaction time is not a substitute for this. And so can you talk about when you in the competitive framework, can you talk about the time and the cost and an on location versus off location for the alternatives, if you will?
Most of the methods that are presently being used, I'll just pick on brain injury, for example, in a sports team. Most of them are holding up two fingers, asking how you are, giving you some questions, looking at the dilation of the eye. Did you pass out? Can you stand on foam rubber? Can you take the impact test? All of these don't work very well. They have very low specificity and sensitivity. About half the time they're wrong. And we're trying to figure out a system that gets around that and also documents it. So not a coach can run a test on a kid, say, yes, you are injured, you're sitting out. And this keeps the parents from saying, why aren't you playing him? There's a coach in the stands is wanting to watch him play so I can get him into college. You're going to cost him a scholarship if you're not playing him. Well, if you play him, you could kill him. Everyone knows that once you've had a concussion, you're a lot more sensitive to getting a second one, and it's going to be far more severe. So the idea is to give people evidence that someone is injured, and more importantly, give the student evidence that he's injured. Because the biggest symptom of a head injury right now is denial. I'm not injured, I'm fine, send me in, coach. And so you've got to show them that they are injured. When I showed a high school quarterback that his reaction time was 300 milliseconds when it was 170, I said, okay, it takes you twice as long to find the target down the field to throw to, and you're not going to throw it very well anyway. And then you try to explain to these guys, watch what happens when someone gets injured on a football field. They stagger off the field. Later on, they come back on the field, and the first thing they do is fumble the ball, miss a pass, can't throw the pass. Why? Because their coordination is shot, and it's going to stay shot for quite a while, several days, until you recover from that head injury. Most people don't seem to be aware that they're injured or don't want to admit they're injured. We demonstrate they are.
Thank you, Bill. And I'm actually going to slide in one more question that came in just now. This will be the last one for you before we circle back for closing remarks. But how easy would it be to interpret the results / readout? You mentioned parents also being able to use the device. Has it been optimized for this, or do you need to do some iterations? Good question.
That little score that I showed you up in the top right of that graph, where there's a little number, is it below 1? That's the simple answer that I've been looking for. I've been trying to find red and green go, no go criteria that anyone can understand. And that's as close as we've come. So basically, as long as you stay in the green on that bar, you're okay.
Thank you for that. Thanks for that, Bill. Great learning about Red Oak Instruments. Before I move into the last presenter, which will be Bill Crossman with Phoenix Pharma Labs, before I do that, I'd love to add a little bit more housekeeping. As always, halfway mark, shameless plug that you can go to netcapital.com and look up these companies. You can search C-Reveal, Red Oak Instruments, and Phoenix Pharma Labs. And of course, they're actively raising capital, so you can invest. One other thing, we will have closing remarks after this last presentation. So I do want to keep my panelists here for a moment to share one last closing remark, and we'll go in reverse order that we started. So we'll start with you with Phoenix, and then we'll go Red Oak, and then we'll go C-Reveal. And then the last thing I'd like to share is over the next 2 days, 7 more innovative companies will present. 4 tomorrow in the advanced technology space. That'll be MyXR, Tala, BN Nano, and Dashable. And 3 will present on Thursday in the consumer goods and technology space. And that'll be Hubsci, Greenbox Robotics, and Mosquito Steve. So do stay with me all week. Plenty more fun to be had. So with all that being said, please help me in welcoming in Bill Crossman with Phoenix Pharma Labs. Come on in, Bill.
Hi. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here.
Perfect.
Okay, is that all good?
Looks great.
Okay, so I'm Bill Crossman. I'm the CEO of Phoenix Pharma Labs, which is a preclinical drug discovery company that is focused on advancing its lead compounds, which are potent, safe, non-addicting painkillers that also show promising potential for opioid as well as cocaine addiction therapy. So opioids are the most widely prescribed drugs for treatment of moderate to severe pain. However, they are plagued by serious side effects, including euphoria, which leads to abuse and addiction, withdrawal, constipation, and death from overdose. Millions of Americans are addicted to opioids, and most of them, approximately 80%, initially became addicted after taking prescription opioids. I understand this problem well because my stepson is addicted to opioids, and he initially became addicted after he had been prescribed opioids for treatment of severe pain following an injury. Now he has been addicted for almost 20 years. And trust me, it is an absolutely devastating addiction. Our novel compound, PPL-103, offers great potential to go a long way towards addressing this problem as a potent painkiller that is 10 times more potent than morphine, that is non-addicting, does not produce physical dependence or withdrawal, and does not cause death from overdose at elevated doses. So how is this possible? Well, all of the leading opioids on the market today, like morphine, oxycodone, hydrocodone, fentanyl, etc., as well as heroin, bind to the mu receptor in the brain and then aggressively stimulate that receptor. A mu is great at producing pain relief, but it also produces euphoria, which leads to abuse and addiction. But there are actually 3 primary opioid receptors, mu, kappa, and delta. PPL-103 is unique because it binds strongly to all three receptors and then just partially stimulates them in a much more balanced manner. That stimulation derives analgesic benefit from all three receptors, but is not sufficiently strong to produce the serious opioid side effects associated with any of the receptors. The reason that all of those other opioids are addicting is because they produce a euphoric high. Without that euphoria, drugs would not be abused and would not be addicting. We recently conducted a thorough review of our competition for a potent, safe, non-addicting analgesic for effective treatment of moderate to severe pain. We investigated other opioid approaches, cannabinoid receptor drugs, etc. Many analgesics on the market and in development are effective for treating mild to moderate pain, but no drugs are as effective as opioids for treating moderate to severe pain. Besides PPL-103, the only analgesics that appear to provide non-addicting relief of moderate to severe pain are two partial nociceptin mu compounds, and Phoenix just acquired one of them from the University of Bath in England. So we acquired 25 nociceptin compounds from the university, including one called BU10038, which we now call PPL-138. It is advanced through various preclinical studies, including a series of studies conducted in non-human primates, where it has demonstrated that it has very high analgesic potency, more than 100 times the potency of morphine, long duration of action, more than 24 hours, thus making it very promising for treatment of chronic pain, no euphoria, and therefore no abuse and addiction potential, no physical dependence or withdrawal, no respiratory depression whatsoever, and no tolerance after 4 weeks of chronic administration. That provides Phoenix with a broad IP platform of 30 compounds and the flexibility to develop different products for different markets that have different pricing parameters, such as pain and addiction therapy. We have received strong validation of our science from the NIH and the DoD, which awarded us grants of about $3 million to fund the advancement of 103 into human clinical trials. We have supplemented that with private equity investment, including our previous Netcapital offering that was oversubscribed under Rule CF. So Phoenix has had discussions and due diligence with most of the leading pharma companies that have a strategic focus on pain or addiction therapy. Most said that they would be interested in doing a deal, either a license or an acquisition, at some point, typically during phase 1. We plan to continue to advance both compounds into phase 1 trials within a year, advancing 103 for acute pain and 138 for chronic pain. We shall then continue to advance the compounds to proof of concept in order to position them for optimal deal terms in about 3 years. Besides this Netcapital offering, we are offering a side-by-side Section 506C offering for accredited investors through our investment bankers at the same $1 price per share that we're offering it on Netcapital, with the goal of raising $10 million, plus additional grant funding that we are applying for. This is a brief view of our very talented management team, but unfortunately, I think I'm probably running short of time, but this is available in much more detail on our offering page and our website. So, questions?
Yes, and I know you are running low, but I'll do a solid here. First question, can you tell us a little bit more about your team, please?
Sure. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've launched a number of early stage technology companies in various technologies. Our chief scientist, Dr. John Lawson, developed our compound while he was at Stanford Research Institute, along with our chief neuropharmacologist, Larry Toll, who's a quite well-known expert in this field. And then we supplement that expertise with a number of domain experts. In order to advance a compound like this, you need experts in chemical synthesis and manufacturing scale-up, clinical development and planning, toxicology, regulatory affairs, we have a consultant in non-human primate studies at Wake Forest University who has conducted all of those monkey studies.
Absolutely. And I'm actually going to go ahead and take down the screen now, but just to make it so we can see everybody a little bit better here. So continuing along that theme, can you tell us a little bit about the competitive landscape? We're talking about non-addictive painkillers. We've already seen very peak interest in your previous Netcapital raise, over $1 million raised, and you're continuing to see success here. Can you talk about how this fits into the competitive landscape and your defensibility, please?
Yeah, sure. So there's lots of drugs on the market and in development that are very effective for treating mild to moderate pain. And one that is very popular now is cannabinoids in various forms as a medication or as an over-the-counter substance. And that's great for mild to moderate pain. But nothing treats moderate to severe pain, real severe pain, as effectively as opioids. And so what we did in that study that we conducted is to look for anything that was as effective as our drugs in treating moderate to severe pain, and also was safe and non-addictive. And like I said, we only found 3, and 2 of them now belong to us and 1 to another company. And we'll be advancing it, both drugs forward.
And can you talk a little bit about the size of the market for pharmacology, specifically with regards to pain management?
Well, the market for pain pharmacology is over $100 billion. The market for opioids is about $35 billion. Our drug, if it demonstrates that it is as effective in treating humans as it is in animals, we would expect that it would be non-scheduled, and therefore it would be able to be taken by people that are in severe pain who avoid taking opioids now because of the addiction potential. And in some countries like China, where people aren't allowed to get access to opioids. And so there's a lot of people suffering in severe pain that don't have any treatment for that pain, but they could with our drug. So that would vastly expand the market from it's already $35 billion.
Absolutely. I'm going to welcome in some more questions from the audience here. How many pivotal studies are you planning to conduct? I guess there are other players in the space that have only done a few, but how many pivotal studies? I'm not as familiar, but I imagine you know exactly what that means.
So I take it by that you mean first after we enter phase 1 human clinical trials, those will be safety studies. So that will include first single dose administration and multiple dose administration to measure all of the potential side effects. So that will determine whether there's constipation or respiratory depression or a feeling of euphoria that would lead to abuse and addiction. And then later on, we would do a human abuse liability study that would measure with great accuracy whether the drug shows any potential for addiction whatsoever. And then efficacy studies. And we would conduct efficacy studies for one in acute pain, for the other in chronic pain, although the two could really be used interchangeably to that extent, to some extent, and as well as for opioid addiction therapy, cocaine addiction therapy, and methamphetamine addiction therapy, where the drugs have already been shown to block relapse of addicted subjects in animals. So they have a lot of potential for that. And the NIH has indicated substantial interest in having us pursue that with grants from them.
Perfect timing. Thank you so much for all of that. But again, before we start to transition over, thank you so much for the panelists for joining, and thank you so much for the attendees for asking those questions. We do have a little bit more of scheduled programming, so please do stick around. I'm going to start ushering us in for closing remarks. As I mentioned, I'm going to go in reverse order this time, so I'm going to welcome Bill Crossman back to the stage with Phoenix Pharma Labs, and the topic for the closing remarks are: why is now the perfect time to go directly to your Netcapital landing page and invest and join the team. So Bill, why don't you come on in? We have about 9 minutes left in this programming. So tell us very briefly why is now the time?
Well, I'd say it is the time. You need to have risk tolerance. So our investment in our company, like most of the companies in Netcapital, involves a substantial amount of risk. So early stage drug development is risky. But in the case of our compounds, if they prove to be as effective and as safe in humans as they have in animals, then the market for them should be very, very large. The return on investment from our licenses to Big Pharma for those compounds should be very substantial. So the return on investment should be remarkable, I believe. And the other reason I think it's important to invest in our company is one of the reasons that I've invested beyond a financial return, and that is that it will do great good for the world. There's millions of people that are addicted to opioids, like my stepson, and it's a terrible addiction. I mean, his life has been a living hell because of his addiction. And our drug has potential to help that situation in two ways. First, as a non-addicting painkiller, but also as an effective opioid or cocaine or methamphetamine addiction therapy that can actually block relapse of addicted subjects. And unlike the drugs that are used for opioid addiction today, like methadone and Suboxone, those drugs, an addict has to remain on those drugs for essentially a lifetime in most cases to just stop them from going back to taking their opioids. And that would not be necessary with a drug that is non-addicting like ours. So it has great potential for treatment of people that are already addicted as well. And I think the opioid crisis has wreaked havoc on a lot of lives in the United States and elsewhere around the world. And I think it's an important unmet medical need that needs a solution. And we believe that we will have the solution to that.
Absolutely. Critically important. Thank you so much for that, Bill. Welcoming back to the stage another Bill Pass with Red Oak Instruments. Why is now the perfect time to join the family by investing through Netcapital in Red Oak Instruments?
We are just about ready to bust through again. That's where we were literally a year ago when COVID hit. We had just finished all our FDA registration, got our medical manufacturing certificates in the state all lined up, and COVID shut us down so that we couldn't go into any clinics. Well, we've been building equipment for the past year, and we're stockpiling our handsets, getting ready for things to open up to where we can actually go out and talk to people again. Plus, we have been learning to talk to people other than medical practitioners that are a little more open. Right now, I literally cannot walk into my wife's medical office. She's a pediatric endocrinologist, and I'm not allowed in the building because I'm not a patient. And so you can't very well talk to people that way. So we're ready. We've got all our licensing straightened out. We've got our patents in order, and we're talking to lawyers now about our CIPs with those patents. So, and the equipment ready to go. We're just waiting to be able to get into people's offices. And that's going to happen soon.
Perfect, Bill. Thank you so much for that. I happen to know a great IP lawyer. He's on the line here right now. No, I'm kidding. He's plenty busy, handful. Yeah, and then last but certainly not least, Thomas Hogg with T-Reveal Therapeutics. Why don't you come on in and tell the people why now is the perfect time to join the family by investing in T-Reveal through the Netcapital platform. Sorry, you're muted. You're muted, Thomas.
Yeah, apologize for that. Before I give the closing remarks, just a couple of clarifying points on the questions I think I didn't get a chance to address. There was one question about how confident we are about hitting the tumor specifically, and then also about how confident we are about off-target effects. And I just wanted to say two things. One is that ALPP and ALPPL2 are highly expressed in a range of different cancers, but they're not expressed anywhere in the normal healthy body except for the placenta. So obviously pregnant women would likely not be eligible for treatment with this therapy, but it's very cancer specific from expression perspective. From off-target perspective, ALPP and ALPPL2 are very structurally different from all the other alkaline phosphatases in the body. And we've done extensive structural biology and analysis on the molecules to look for the most sequence-specific points of attack on the molecules. Another question was, how much do we need to raise? Well, as I mentioned, we're raising $3 million in this round to get us to a basket of nanomolar affinity, highly specific molecules to target these enzymes. That will put us in a position to move into lead optimization and then pre-IND studies. So for those studies, we think we'll probably need to raise another $5 to $7 million, but we'll be in a very strong position enabled to do that and have a substantial value inflection point behind us in order to be able to raise those additional funds. Obviously, to get into the clinic, we'd be looking to raise $20 to $30 million, but that's farther down the road. Getting back to sort of the why now and why C-reveal aspect of this, and it's no secret that cancer is a massive problem. There's been so much done over the last 40 years and really very little progress to show for it, with the exception of the last couple of years when there's been breakthrough improvements in the treatment of cancer in immunotherapy. And the two sort of poster children drugs for that are Opdivo and Keytruda. These are checkpoint blockade therapies that have the function of ramping up the immune system, ramping up T cells in your immune system that recognize and kill cancer cells. But they can't do anything unless they can see the targets that they have to go after. And we've identified the mechanism that blocks those targets from being expressed on cancer cells. So you can have these revved up revved up T cells, but if they can't see what they're supposed to kill, you're not going to get the effect that these drugs have promised. And they are, in some portion of cases, 10-15% of cases, extremely effective when you ramp up T cells using these drugs. And they've been lauded as miracle cures for many people with cancer. But again, the problem is they don't work for 85% of patients. So by using this breakthrough mechanism of action that we believe has been co-opted from the placenta as an immunotolerizing organ by tumor cells, by blocking this mechanism of action, we can increase the antigen load on tumor cells and get the T cells to recognize them and kill them. And if we can increase the penetrance in the patient population from 15% to 25 to 30%, it's already a massive increase in value for our shareholders, but of course, for the lives of the patients that are dying with cancer and continue to die in large numbers. And this provides real hope to bring the promise of immunotherapy forward.
Thank you so much for that, Thomas. I appreciate that. And I again, almost my entire family is medical. I sympathize so wholeheartedly with the biotech and the medical technology space. So it's been a pleasure to hang out with you all and learn more about your companies. And thank you so much for your time. I have a couple more housekeeping items before we wrap up. Won't take more than a minute or two. This has been recorded and will be uploaded to the Netcapital YouTube account as always. And I have added a link to that directly into the chat. And so feel free to click that. And over the next couple of moments, I know it's getting a little late East Coast time, so you might not see the link tonight, but certainly soon it'll be available for you to share with your friends and family. As always, these companies are actively raising capital on Netcapital, so please do visit netcapital.com, search for the names of these companies, and you can learn more about them, do your research, and if you are inclined to, you can invest. I'd like to point out that everybody did a great job talking about how this is a risky asset class, so please do invest responsibly. All that being said, the last item on my agenda here is that we do have a few more events coming up this month, and it's actually all this week as we round out our March Demo Day series. And so over the next 2 days, 7 more innovative companies will present for tomorrow in the advanced technology space. That is MyXR, Tala, BN Nano, and Dashable, and 3 the following day on Thursday in the consumer goods and technology space. And that will be Hubsci, Greenbox Robotics, and Mosquito Steve. So I hope to see you all throughout the rest of the week, and we can all hang out together and have some more fun. With that being said, we have concluded our regularly scheduled programming here. Thank you so much to my panelists, Thomas Hogg with CReveal, Bill Task with Red Oak Instruments, and Bill Crossman with Phoenix Labs. And thank you to all of you for attending and listening. I hope to see you all soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.